a divorce is hard enough. But what if your spouse won't do their part to get your divorce finalized? I've heard it thousands of times over the years. Something like, my spouse is pretending that this divorce isn't happening. He's just totally avoiding it and won't talk to me about it. Or every time I make a proposal for settlement, she takes a month or more to get back to me. My divorce is stuck. Does my spouse have to participate in the divorce? Well, the answer is probably yes, but only one of you really has to drive the process. First things first, sometimes in order to get your spouse in gear, you actually have to file the divorce petition. Sometimes they just won't accept that it's actually happening until they see that the legal process has begun. Now, in almost all states, if your spouse doesn't respond, meaning they don't file and prepare the required initial paperwork within the time frame that the law provides, you can often still continue to move forward with your divorce and move on to the next step. That next step is usually exchanging financial information, and you can often do it without their participation. That works really well unless you need financial information from your spouse that you don't have access to and they refuse to give it to you. When you get to that last step where you're finalizing your divorce agreement and paperwork, that's when you really want to get their involvement and see if you can get them to sign off. If you can't, every state provides a method by which you can still get divorced, but it's often really complicated, doesn't allow for much creative freedom, plus you often need or would really benefit from a lawyer in that situation. And then let's just say you do get the judge to approve your divorce, and then your spouse comes back later and finally wants to get involved. Sometimes your divorce orders can be undone, and then you're basically starting from scratch. So, as painful as it might be, I generally say it's a really good idea to do whatever you can, within reason, to encourage your spouse to participate in that last step so that you can ultimately get their signature on the final divorce paperwork and move on to your next chapter. That will make the divorce go so much quicker, and the judge is much more likely to approve the terms that you have agreed to, even if they're not strictly in conformance with the law. So, what can I do to help get my spouse on board? Okay, first of all, you got to keep things moving. So do all the steps you can do without your spouse. In most states, both spouses don't need to do everything. So get what you can get done out of the way, and Hello Divorce will lead you through each of these steps. The next thing you can try is to set some ground rules with your spouse. Saying something like, I need closure and I'm not willing to wait a year or more to get this done. I really don't want both of us to have to get lawyers and go to court and spend lots of money and get messy. Can you, at a minimum, commit to meeting every Saturday for an hour to hammer out an agreement, or at least we can see where we do have agreements and where we might need some help. Another thing you can do is get the additional information that you need in order to get your divorce finalized. So as an example, if you're thinking that you might want to offset one asset with another, like your spouse would get a portion of the 401k in exchange for you keeping the house. Now we have to value this stuff. And if you have a complicated asset, like one of you has an employee stock option, you might need to pull in some help to get this stuff valued before you can finalize your divorce. So now is a really great time to meet with one of our CDFAs, our Certified Divorce Financial Analysts, who can help you do this quickly and easily. Another thing you can do is schedule a meeting at a neutral place, like a coffee shop, to discuss. Come as prepared as possible and try to get through as many issues as you possibly can. Maybe you can agree to a timeline. We've got a lot to do here so that we can finalize our divorce and avoid court. I propose that we respond to offers or to settlement emails within 5 days of receipt. Does that sound doable? One thing that you can also do is ask them to tell you or send you an offer for settlement. Then validate as much of it as you possibly can. Choose your battles wisely. For instance, if it's not going to matter to you in a year, just agree to that term. You can even say something like, "Thank you for clarifying that for me. It makes so much sense." So what if he recited the same point that you've been trying to get across for the last year? It doesn't matter. Sometimes you have to swallow your pride a little bit to get to an agreement. Then grab your glass of wine, get a massage, or do something other that is self-care so that you can recover. Avoid a free-for-all. I'm not gonna lie, divorce negotiations can be really hard. If the two of you are getting trapped into old emotional patterns, maybe it's hostile, overly defensive, passive-aggressive, it's time to break and reschedule the meeting to allow both of you to cool down. The communication issues that you had during the marriage aren't magically going to go away in separation. Now, one other strategy is to see if you can get them to agree to meet with a mediator and talk through what you've already come to an agreement on, get that on paper, and work through any additional conflict. Our mediators can work with both of you, or they can shuffle between the two of you online or by phone. But the goal here is to get you to a resolution that feels fair and to keep the pressure on so that you have a timetable by which you can stay motivated and keep the process moving. Ultimately, we got to remind each other that this is hard, truly, but it absolutely beats going to court. That you want to work cooperatively and you trust that the two of you can do this. And believe me, you can. And the reason why I know that is because 95% of divorces settle without a contested court trial. What if I start my divorce with Hello Divorce and I get to that final step where I need to negotiate an agreement with my spouse, but they refuse to cooperate? Okay, so at that point, you have a couple options. One is you might want to refer your spouse to Hello Divorce to have their own 15-minute informational call. Also, if you can't get your spouse to sit down and come to an agreement or meet with one of our mediators to see what you can work out, that might be a really great opportunity for you to meet with one of our lawyers or your own lawyer to talk through what your options are. So you have filed the divorce petition in California, and now your spouse has 30 days to respond, but hasn't. Can you still move forward? And the answer is absolutely. There are methods by which you can continue to move the divorce forward without having your spouse be actively involved. The ultimate goal will be to get your spouse to provide you the financial information that you need so that you can negotiate a final divorce settlement and to sign that final settlement of agreement.